You picked it up 14 times today before noon. Maybe more. You might not have noticed. You were in the middle of something. A meal, a conversation, a thought that almost finished forming. And then your hand moved on its own. Toward the phone. Always toward the phone. And here is the strange part. Most of those times, there was nothing new there. No urgent message, no critical update, just a reflex that completed itself before your conscious mind had any say in the matter. Why does that happen? The answer is not what the headlines tell you. The answer is older than Silicon Valley by about 2 million years. Your brain was not designed for the modern world. That sounds like a cliché, but sit with the specific mechanics of it for a moment, because the details are where it gets strange. Your brain is a prediction machine. Every second of your waking life, it is running a model of the world, calculating what is likely to happen next, what is safe, what deserves attention. This is not a metaphor. Neuroscientist Carl Friston at University College London spent decades building what he calls the free energy principle, which describes the brain as fundamentally an engine that tries to minimize surprise. Your brain does not like uncertainty. Uncertainty, for most of human history, was the thing that got you killed. And so evolution built you a nervous system that is obsessively, compulsively, furiously attentive to the unknown. Now put a glowing rectangle in that nervous system's hands. A rectangle that might contain something important or nothing. You cannot know until you look. That uncertainty, that specific pattern of maybe something, maybe nothing, is not a design flaw in your phone. It is a deliberate architecture, and it maps with almost surgical precision onto the oldest reward system in your brain. In 1971, psychologist Michael Zeiler ran an experiment on pigeons. He set up a lever that, when pecked, sometimes dispensed food. Not every time. Sometimes. Randomly. What he found changed how scientists understood the brain. The pigeons did not peck the lever occasionally when hungry, and then stop. They became obsessive. They pecked more when the reward was unpredictable than when it was guaranteed. Zeiler had accidentally discovered what is now called a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. It is the most powerful behavioral conditioning mechanism ever identified in any living animal. It is the same mechanism that powers slot machines. It is the same mechanism baked into every social media feed, every notification badge, every inbox you have ever refreshed. Your phone is a lever. You already know this. But knowing it does not stop the pecking, and that gap between knowing and stopping is where the real story lives. Here is what happens in your brain the moment you feel the urge to check your phone. A structure deep in your midbrain called the nucleus accumbens receives a pulse of dopamine. Not a reward, a signal that a reward might be coming. This is a critical distinction that neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz spent decades mapping in his research on reward prediction. Dopamine, contrary to popular belief, is not the pleasure chemical. It is the anticipation chemical. It fires hardest not when you get what you want, but in the moment just before, when the outcome is still unknown. This is why the act of reaching for the phone feels urgent in a way that the contents rarely justify. The dopamine has already done its job before you even unlock the screen. By the time you see that nothing has changed, the biological reward cycle is already complete. You already got the hit. And so, approximately 90 seconds later, the system resets and the urge begins to build again. This is not addiction in the clinical sense, though the mechanisms overlap considerably. It is something more fundamental. It is your ancient threat detection system, your social radar, your status monitor, and your foraging instinct, all recruited simultaneously by an object the size of your palm. Think about what your brain is actually scanning for when you check your phone. Social information. Who said what? Who responded? Who ignored? Who approves? Humans are the most deeply social animal that has ever existed on Earth. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford has spent his career studying the relationship between primate brain size and social group complexity. What he found is that the ratio of neocortex to the rest of the brain scales almost perfectly with the average social group size across primate species. The bigger the neocortex, the bigger the stable social group the animal can manage. Humans top this scale. Our neocortex is so large, so disproportionate, that Dunbar's number, the cognitive limit of stable human social relationships, lands at approximately 150 people. The entirety of that cognitive machinery, all of that evolutionary investment, exists to track a social world, to monitor alliances, to detect threats from within the group, to notice who is gaining status and who is losing it, to stay connected in a way that, for 99% of human history, was the literal difference between surviving and dying. Now imagine you hand that ancient high-stakes social monitoring system a device that gives it access to thousands of social signals per day. Likes, views, follower counts, read receipts, reaction emojis, and then tell it to relax. That is what you are asking your brain to do every time someone tells you to just put your phone away and be present. You are not weak. You are not addicted to distraction. You are running 2-million-year-old social software on a device built in the last 15 years, and the software was never given a patch. There is another layer here that almost nobody talks about. Your phone does not just trigger your social instincts, it triggers your information foraging instincts. Psychologist Peter Wybrow at UCLA has written extensively about what he calls the brain's asymmetric reward system, a design where the drive to seek is always stronger than the satisfaction of finding. In evolutionary terms, this makes perfect sense. An ancestor who stopped foraging the moment they found one berry would not survive long. The brain had to keep the seeker restless, keep it curious, keep it moving toward the next possible source of nutrition, information, or safety. You inherited that restlessness. And the internet is an information environment so vast and so inexhaustible that the foraging instinct never reaches a natural stopping point. There is always one more article, one more video, one more update. The berry bush never runs out, and so the forager never stops. This is why scrolling feels different from reading a book. A book has an end. Your feed does not. A book creates natural stopping points. An infinite scroll was literally patented by Asa Raskin in 2006 specifically to remove them. Raskin, who later publicly apologized for the invention, described the mechanism as turning a finite resource into an endless one, and in doing so, removing the brain's only reliable signal to stop. You live in a world built by people who understood your brain better than you do. That is not a conspiracy, it is a business model. In 2017, former president of Facebook Sean Parker said publicly and plainly that the platform was designed from the beginning to consume as much of your time and attention as possible, to exploit a vulnerability in human psychology. He used that word, vulnerability. The teams building these systems knew about Zeiler's pigeons. They knew about dopamine and anticipation. They knew about social monitoring and the cost of exclusion. And they built products that spoke to every one of those ancient systems fluently. The result is a technology that your rational mind can examine, critique, and fully understand, and still feel completely unable to put down. Because the rational mind is not the part being spoken to. Your frontal lobe understands that nothing important is happening. Your limbic system, the ancient, pre-rational, emotionally driven core of your brain, disagrees. And in most moment-to-moment decisions about attention, the limbic system wins. Psychologist Roy Baumeister at Florida State University has spent decades studying willpower, and what his research consistently shows is that self-control is not a character trait. It is a finite cognitive resource. Every act of deliberate restraint draws from the same pool. By the time you have made 100 small decisions in a day, what to eat, what to say, how to respond, the part of your brain that is supposed to override the phone-reaching impulse is depleted, and the impulse remains as strong as it was at breakfast. This is why the advice to simply try harder does not work. You are not failing to override the system, you are being out-resourced by it. So what actually works? Not willpower. Environment. The research is consistent. The closer your phone is to your body, the more attention it claims. Even when it is silent, even when it is face down, even when it is turned off. A 2017 study by Adrian Ward and colleagues at the University of Texas at Austin found that the mere presence of a smartphone on a desk, visible but untouched, measurably reduced cognitive performance in the people sitting next to it. The phone did not have to be used. It did not have to make a sound. Its physical proximity was enough to occupy a portion of the brain's attention, because some part of your mind was tracking it, the way your ancestors tracked movement in the trees. The only intervention that consistently works is distance. Not discipline, distance. When the phone is in another room, it cannot trigger the anticipation signal. The loop cannot begin. You do not get credit for resisting a pull you never feel. You only get the benefit. Tonight, when you reach for your phone without knowing why, pause for 1 second before your fingers close around it. Not to stop yourself, just to notice. The urge will feel like a need. It will feel urgent. It will feel like there is something important you might be missing. That feeling is real. It is ancient. It served your ancestors in ways that are almost impossible to fully appreciate. But here is the thing that makes all of it make sense. Every time that urge fires, it is not your phone calling to you. It is the same system that once scanned the tree line for movement. The same system that listened for your name being spoken across a campfire. The same system that tracked who ate and who did not, who was included and who was cast out, who was safe and who was not. Your phone did not create that system, it just found it. And in finding it, it told you something you already knew, without knowing that you knew it. You still need your tribe. You still scan for signals in the noise. You still forage for information the way your ancestors foraged for food. You picked it up 14 times before noon. And now, at least, you know why.